The call came at 3:47 a.m. on a Tuesday, piercing through Maya Chen's exhausted sleep like a blade through silk. She fumbled for her phone in the cramped dorm room she shared with her roommate Jessie, who stirred but didn't wake. The caller ID displayed University Financial Aid Office, and Maya's stomach immediately twisted into knots. Nobody called from the financial aid office at this hour unless something was catastrophically wrong. "Miss Chen?" The voice was formal, strained. "This is Director Patricia Holbrook from Student Financial Services. I need you to come to my office immediately. There's been a serious issue with your account." Maya sat up, her mind racing through possibilities. Had she missed a deadline? Forgotten to submit paperwork? The scholarship money from the Henderson Foundation had been her lifeline, a full ride covering tuition, room, board, and a modest living stipend. Without it, her dreams of becoming a software engineer would crumble like autumn leaves. "What kind of issue?" Maya whispered, stepping into the hallway so she wouldn't wake Jessie. The pause on the other end stretched like a taut wire. "I can't discuss this over the phone. Please come to my office now." And Miss Chen, Director Holbrook's voice carried an unusual weight. "You might want to contact your family." The line went dead, leaving Maya staring at her phone in the dim hallway light. The fluorescent bulbs hummed overhead, casting sickly shadows on the institutional green walls of Patterson Hall. She'd walked these hallways hundreds of times over the past 2 years, but tonight they felt foreign, threatening. Maya threw on jeans and a Stanford hoodie, a gift from her father when she'd been accepted, back when he'd seemed so proud of her achievements. The memory stung now, though she couldn't understand why. She grabbed her keys, wallet, and student ID, her hands shaking slightly as she locked her dorm room door. The campus was eerily quiet at this hour. Security lights illuminated empty pathways where students normally rush between classes and social gatherings. Maya's footsteps echoed against the brick buildings as she made her way to the administrative complex. The October air carried a bite that made her pull her hoodie tighter around herself. The Henderson Foundation scholarship had changed everything for Maya's family. When the acceptance letter had arrived 18 months ago, her father, David Chen, had tears in his eyes. "My daughter," he'd said in Mandarin, his voice thick with emotion. "The first in our family to receive such an honor." Her mother, Lynn, had immediately started planning a celebration dinner, inviting extended family and neighbors to share in their pride. Maya had been valedictorian at her high school in San Francisco's Richmond district, where her parents ran a small import business specializing in electronics and home goods. The shop, Chen Electronics, occupied the ground floor of the narrow building where Maya had grown up. It smelled perpetually of cardboard, plastic, and her mother's jasmine tea. The scholarship meant Maya could focus entirely on her studies without worrying about working multiple part-time jobs like so many of her classmates. Now, as she approached the imposing glass doors of the Westbrook Administrative Building, Maya felt that security slipping away like sand through her fingers. Director Holbrook was waiting in her office despite the ungodly hour. She was a tall woman in her 50s with silver-streaked hair pulled back severely and wire-rimmed glasses that reflected the harsh office lighting. Beside her sat a man Maya didn't recognize. Middle-aged, wearing a dark suit that screamed federal employee.
"Miss Chen, please sit down." Director Holbrook's voice was carefully controlled. "This is Special Agent Martinez with the Federal Bureau of Investigation." The room seemed to tilt. Maya gripped the arms of the chair, her knuckles white against the burgundy leather. "The FBI? I don't understand. What's going on?" Agent Martinez leaned forward slightly. He had kind eyes, Maya noticed, which somehow made everything worse. "Miss Chen, we've discovered significant irregularities in your financial aid documentation, specifically with the funds dispersed from the Henderson Foundation scholarship." "Irregularities?" Mayan's voice came out as barely a whisper. Director Holbrook opened a thick manila folder. "According to our records, the Henderson Foundation has dispersed $127,000 over the past 18 months directly to your personal account, as requested in the documentation we received. However, when we attempted to reconcile some discrepancies in our systems, we discovered that the Foundation has no record of approving these disbursements." The words hit Maya like physical blows. $127,000? That's impossible. I never requested money to go to my personal account. Everything was supposed to go directly to the university. Agent Martinez pulled out his own folder. Miss Chen, we have copies of signed documents bearing your name and social security number requesting that scholarship funds be deposited directly into a Bank of America account ending in 7432. The signature matches your enrollment paperwork. Maya's mind reeled. She did have a Bank of America account, the same one she'd had since she was 16, originally set up by her father to teach her financial responsibility. But she'd never used it for anything beyond small personal expenses. Can I see the documents? Director Holbrook slid several papers across the desk. Maya's hands trembled as she examined them. The signature looked like hers, but something felt off about the handwriting. The address listed was correct, her family's home in San Francisco. The social security number was accurate, but Maya had no memory of ever signing these forms. I didn't sign these. I mean, it looks like my signature, but I never filled out any paperwork requesting money to go to my personal account. Every communication I had with the Henderson Foundation went through you, Director Holbrook. That's what concerns us, Agent Martinez said gently. Someone with access to your personal information submitted these forms. The question is who? Maya's phone buzzed with a text message. It was from her father. Where are you? Your mother is worried. Come home this weekend. We need to talk. The timing felt like more than a coincidence. Maya showed the message to both officials. Director Holbrook frowned. Ms. Chen, do you mind if I ask about your family's financial situation? We're comfortable. We were. The import business has been struggling since COVID. A lot of their suppliers in China have had problems, and shipping costs have been crazy. But my parents never told me it was serious. Agent Martinez made a note. Who in your family has access to your social security number, birth certificate, and other personal documents? The implications hit Maya like a freight train. Her parents had always handled important paperwork for the family. When she'd applied for the Henderson Foundation scholarship, her father had helped her gather all the necessary documents. He'd been so meticulous, so proud to help her with each form. My parents, she whispered. But they wouldn't. They couldn't. Ms. Chen, I need to inform you that as of this moment, your enrollment status is under review. The university cannot continue to provide services while this investigation is ongoing. Maya felt the walls closing in. What does that mean exactly?
It means you cannot attend classes, access campus facilities, or live in university housing until this matter is resolved, Agent Martinez explained. However, we're hoping to resolve this quickly. If you're truly a victim of fraud, we want to help you. The word victim hung in the air like smoke. Maya had always been the strong one in her family, the achiever, the problem solver, the one everyone counted on. Now she felt smaller than she ever had in her life. I need to call my parents, Maya said, though every instinct screamed against it. That might not be advisable right now, Agent Martinez cautioned. If someone in your family is involved in this fraud, contacting them could complicate our investigation. Maya stared at her phone, her father's text message still glowing on the screen. The man who had taught her to ride a bike, who had worked 16-hour days to keep their store afloat, who had cried when she graduated as valedictorian. Could he really have stolen from her? Director Holbrook handed Maya a business card. There is a motel about 2 miles from campus where you can stay while we sort this out. The university will cover the cost until we determine your status. Agent Martinez will need to interview you more extensively tomorrow. As Maya walked out of the administrative building, the pre-dawn sky was beginning to lighten. Students would be waking up soon, heading to dining halls and early classes, continuing their normal lives while hers fell apart. She pulled out her phone and scrolled through her contacts, looking for someone to call, someone who might understand. Her finger hovered over her best friend Celia's number, then moved to her academic advisor, Professor Williams. But what would she say? That her own father might have committed federal fraud using her identity, that everything she'd worked for was built on stolen money. Instead, Maya found herself walking toward the campus chapel, a small stone building nestled among oak trees behind the library. She wasn't particularly religious, but the building had always felt peaceful to her. The doors were unlocked,
They always were, according to campus tradition. Inside, colored light filtered through stained glass windows depicting scenes she didn't recognize but found comforting anyway. Maya slid into a wooden pew and finally allowed herself to cry. The tears came in waves for her shattered trust, for her uncertain future, for the father she thought she knew. As the sun rose fully over the campus, casting long shadows through the chapel windows, Maya made a decision. She would find out the truth, no matter how much it hurt. But first, she needed to understand how someone could forge documents so perfectly that they fooled both a university and a federal agent. The question that haunted her most wasn't whether her father was guilty, it was how long he'd been planning this, and whether the pride in his eyes when she'd received the scholarship was real or just relief that his plan was working. Maya spent the first night at the Sunset Motel staring at the water-stained ceiling, her mind cycling through memories like a broken film reel. She remembered the exact moment her father had suggested she opened a Bank of America account. She'd been 16, working part-time at their electronics store, and he'd insisted she needed to learn financial responsibility. In America, credit history is everything, he'd said in his careful English, the accent still thick after 25 years in the country. You start building it now, Maya, for your future. He'd driven her to the bank branch on Geary Boulevard, waited patiently while she filled out paperwork, and celebrated afterwards with dim sum at their favorite restaurant. At the time, it had felt like a rite of passage. Now, Maya wondered if it had been the first step in an elaborate long-term plan.
The next morning, she found herself unable to eat the complimentary breakfast at the motel. The artificial scrambled eggs and burnt coffee reminded her too much of the meals she'd skipped during high school, staying up late to study while her parents worked downstairs in the shop. Maya had been so focused on academic excellence that she'd barely noticed her family's financial struggles growing more severe each year. She drove her decade-old Honda Civic to a coffee shop near campus, needing familiar surroundings even if she couldn't access them. Through the window, she watched students hurrying to morning classes, backpacks slung over their shoulders, discussing assignments and weekend plans. Just yesterday, she'd been one of them. Now she felt like she was observing life from behind glass. Maya pulled out her laptop and began researching financial aid fraud. The penalties were severe, up to 5 years in prison and substantial fines. If her father was guilty, it wouldn't just destroy her education, it could tear their family apart permanently. Her mother, Lynn, barely spoke English and had always depended on David to handle anything involving government agencies or official paperwork. How would she survive if he went to prison? Her phone rang. The caller ID showed her mother's number, and Maya's finger hovered over the decline button before she answered. Maya? Wei? Her mother's voice carried the worry that had become increasingly common over the past few years. Hi, Mama. Maya tried to keep her voice steady. Your father says you didn't come home last night. Are you okay? Are you sick? Maya closed her eyes, picturing her mother in the cluttered apartment above the store, probably wearing the faded apron she always donned when she was anxious, the one with small flowers that had been bright once, but had faded to pastels through countless washings. Maya had been so focused on academic excellence that she'd barely noticed her family's financial struggles growing more severe each year. She drove her decade-old Honda Civic to a coffee shop near campus, needing familiar surroundings even if she couldn't access them. Through the window, she watched students hurrying to morning classes, backpacks slung over their shoulders, discussing assignments and weekend plans. Just yesterday, she'd been one of them. Now she felt like she was observing life from behind glass. Maya pulled out her laptop and began researching financial aid fraud. The penalties were severe, up to 5 years in prison and substantial fines. If her father was guilty, it wouldn't just destroy her education, it could tear their family apart permanently. Her mother, Lynn, barely spoke English and had always depended on David to handle anything involving government agencies or official paperwork. How would she survive if he went to prison? Her phone rang. The caller ID showed her mother's number,
and Maya's finger hovered over the decline button before she answered. Maya? Wei? Her mother's voice carried the worry that had become increasingly common over the past few years. Hi, Mama. Maya tried to keep her voice steady. Your father says you didn't come home last night. Are you okay? Are you sick? Maya closed her eyes, picturing her mother in the cluttered apartment above the store, probably wearing the faded apron she always donned when she was anxious, the one with small flowers that had been bright once, but had faded to pastels through countless washings. I'm fine, Mama. Just dealing with some school things. School things? Lynn's English became more fractured when she was worried. What kind of school things? You always tell me school is going good. Maya had always been her mother's translator of the American world, explaining college applications, career prospects, cultural differences. Lynn had immigrated to America when Maya was 2, following David's promise of better opportunities. She'd left behind her extended family, her language, her entire world, trusting that her husband's vision of their American dream would prove true. It's complicated, Mama. I'll call you later, okay? Maya, your father wants to talk to you. He says it's important. Before Maya could object, her father's voice came through the phone. Maya, where are you? David Chen's voice carried the authority he developed over years of running the electronics store, negotiating with suppliers, and navigating the complex world of small business ownership. But Maya heard something else underneath, a tension she'd noticed more frequently in recent months. I'm at school, Baba. Maya used the Mandarin word for father automatically, as she always did. You need to come home this weekend. We have family business to discuss. The phrase family business had always meant serious conversations in the Chen household. It's what her parents had said when they'd explained why Maya's grandmother in Beijing couldn't visit anymore, why certain cousins had stopped calling, why the store's hours had been reduced. What kind of family business? A long pause. She could hear her mother moving around in the background, probably cleaning, her automatic response to stress. The kind that requires family to stick together, David said finally. Maya, you're my daughter, my only child. Everything I do for you and your mother. The words sent chills through Maya. They sounded like justification, like preparation for a confession she wasn't ready to hear.
Baba, I can't come home right now. I have commitments at school. Commitments? His voice sharpened. What commitments are more important than family? Maya thought about Agent Martinez, about Director Holbrook's suspended judgment, about the $127,000 that had somehow found its way into her bank account without her knowledge. Academic commitments. You always taught me education comes first. Another pause. Maya, sometimes the world forces difficult choices on us. Sometimes what looks like wrong is actually the only way to do right. The philosophical tone was classic David Chen. Maya had grown up hearing his theories about moral flexibility, about how rules were different for immigrants, about how success in America required adapting to systems that weren't designed for people like them. She'd always admired his pragmatism. Now it sounded like rationalization. I have to go, Baba. I'll call you later. She hung up before he could respond, then immediately felt guilty. Maya had never hung up on her father before. Respect for parents was fundamental in their household, not just cultural expectation, but emotional survival in a family that had sacrificed so much for her opportunities. Maya spent the afternoon in the university library, even though she technically wasn't supposed to be on campus. She found a corner table in the graduate section where she was unlikely to encounter anyone she knew, and opened her laptop to dive deeper into her situation. The Henderson Foundation's website showed no record of her scholarship. When she called their main number, the receptionist politely but firmly stated that they had no scholarship program matching the one described in Maya's documents. They suggested she contact the university's financial aid office to resolve the confusion. But there was no confusion on the university's end.
Director Holbrook had shown her clear records of fund transfers, signed authorizations, and deposit confirmations. Someone had created an elaborate fake correspondence between the university and a non-existent scholarship program, complete with official letterhead, reference numbers, and administrative contacts. Maya examined the documents Agent Martinez had shown her more carefully. The fake Henderson Foundation letterhead was remarkably sophisticated. The signature that wasn't quite hers, but was close enough to fool casual inspection. The careful attention to bureaucratic language and formatting. This wasn't the work of someone who decided impulsively to commit fraud. This was planned, methodical, professional. Her father had always been meticulous about paperwork. Maya remembered watching him organize tax documents, business licenses, and import permits with obsessive care. He'd taught her to keep copies of everything, to read the fine print, to never trust that someone else would handle important details correctly. In America, he had often said, paperwork is more important than people. You master the paperwork, you master the system. Maya's phone buzzed with a text from Jessie, her roommate. "Girl, where are you? Your stuff is still here, but RA says you're not enrolled anymore. What's going on?" The practical implications were hitting home. Maya's belongings were still in her dorm room, but she couldn't access them. Her meal plan was canceled. Her student ID wouldn't work for buildings, library access, or campus computers. She was suddenly homeless and disconnected from the community that had become her life. She texted back, "Family emergency. Can you pack my stuff? I'll explain later." Maya walked to her favorite spot on campus, a bench beside the small pond behind the engineering building where she had often eaten lunch while reading computer programming manuals. The late afternoon sun cast long shadows across the water, and ducks paddled peacefully between patches of lily pads. It was the kind of scene that had always calmed her, but today it felt like looking at someone else's life. A familiar voice interrupted her thoughts. "Maya, what are you doing out here? Don't you have advanced algorithms at 4?
Professor Sarah Williams approached the bench, carrying a stack of papers and wearing her characteristic concerned expression. Professor Williams taught Maya's favorite class, Machine Learning Applications, and had become an informal mentor over the past year. She was one of the few faculty members who seemed to genuinely care about students as individuals, rather than just academic statistics. "Professor Williams?" Maya stood up, unsure how to explain her situation. "You missed lab yesterday, and that's not like you. Is everything all right?" Maya found herself fighting back tears again. Professor Williams had been encouraging her to apply for graduate school, to consider research positions, to see herself as a future leader in technology. How could Maya explain that everything was falling apart? "It's complicated," Maya said finally. "There's been a problem with my financial aid." Professor Williams frowned. "What kind of problem?" "The department has several emergency funds for students facing unexpected difficulties." "It's not that simple. There might be legal issues." Professor Williams sat down on the bench and gestured for Maya to join her. "Maya, you're one of my most promising students. Your work on the automated testing framework last semester was graduate-level quality. Whatever's happening, we'll figure out a way through it." The kindness in her voice made Maya's composure crumble. She found herself explaining everything: the early morning call, the FBI agent, the forged documents, her suspicions about her father. Professor Williams listened without judgment, occasionally asking clarifying questions, but mostly just being present as Maya's world collapsed in words. "Maya," Professor Williams said when she finished, "you need to separate your father's actions from your own worth and potential. Whatever he may have done, it doesn't change what I've seen from you academically. You have a brilliant mind and a strong ethical foundation. That's not something that can be forged or stolen. But if he did this, Everything I've accomplished is based on stolen money. My education, my opportunities, everything. No, Professor Williams said firmly. Your education is based on your intelligence, your hard work, and your dedication. Money just pays the bills. The knowledge in your head, the skills you've developed, the relationships you've built, those are earned, not bought. Maya wanted to believe her, but the guilt felt overwhelming. How can I continue studying when other deserving students couldn't afford to come here? Students who didn't have family members willing to commit fraud for them. You continue because giving up now won't help those students, and it will waste the investment that's already been made in your education. Whether that investment came from legitimate sources or not, the best way to honor it is to use your talents to create positive change in the world. As the sun set behind the engineering building, Maya felt something shift inside her. The pain and confusion remained, but Professor Williams had helped her see a path forward that didn't involve drowning in guilt or abandoning her dreams. "What do I do now?" Maya asked. "First, you cooperate fully with the investigation. Second, you document everything you remember about how this fraud was committed. Third, you start thinking about how to rebuild your academic future, regardless of how this situation resolves." Maya walked back to the motel that evening with a slightly clearer sense of purpose. She would find out the truth about her father's actions, but she wouldn't let his choices destroy her future. She owed that much to herself, to her mother, and to every student who had worked multiple jobs to afford the education she'd received through fraud. But first, she needed to understand exactly how deep this deception went, and whether the father she'd always admired had been lying to her for years.
The next morning brought a knock on Maya's motel room door at 7 a.m. sharp. Through the peephole, she saw Agent Martinez holding 2 coffee cups and a manila envelope. His expression was serious, but not unkind, the look of someone about to deliver news that would hurt, but needed to be heard. "Miss Chen, we need to talk. I brought coffee." Maya opened the door, accepting the cup gratefully. She'd barely slept, her mind churning through possibilities and memories. "Have you found something?" Agent Martinez sat at the small table by the window. "We've traced the fraudulent scholarship payments back further than we initially thought. This wasn't a recent development, Maya. The fake Henderson Foundation correspondence began almost 3 years ago, before you even applied to college." Maya felt the blood drain from her face. 3 years? But that means... It means someone was planning this fraud before you were even accepted to the university. They created fake documentation, established communication channels with a financial aid office, and built an elaborate fictional relationship between you and a scholarship program that never existed. Maya sank into the other chair. 3 years ago, she'd been a high school sophomore, focused on maintaining perfect grades and participating in robotics club. She had no idea that her college applications would even be competitive, let alone that she'd receive scholarship offers. Agent Martinez opened the envelope. "We've also discovered that the Bank of America account where the funds were deposited had a second authorized user added 2 years ago. Someone with access to your social security number added themselves to your account." "Who?" Maya asked, though she dreaded the answer. "David Chen. Your father." The words hit her like physical blows. Maya had suspected, but having it confirmed felt like watching her childhood collapse in real time. "Are you sure?" "We have the signed bank authorization forms. The handwriting matches samples we obtained from your father's business records." Agent Martinez pulled out a plastic evidence bag containing several documents. "Maya, I need to ask you directly. Did you know your father had access to your bank account?" "No." Maya's voice was barely audible. "I knew he helped me set it up when I was 16, but I thought it was just mine."
According to bank records, there were regular deposits into that account over the past 18 months, totaling $127,000 as we discussed. But there were also regular withdrawals, large ones. Maya looked up sharply. Withdrawals? Agent Martinez nodded grimly. The money didn't stay in your account, Maya. It was systematically transferred to other accounts, some belonging to your father's business, some to accounts we're still tracing. You were essentially being used as a money laundering vehicle. The room began to spin. Maya gripped the edge of the table. So he didn't even steal the money for my education. He stole it for himself. That's what the evidence suggests. Your father created an elaborate scheme to defraud the university's financial aid system, used your identity to receive the funds, then redirected that money to cover his own financial obligations. Maya's frown rang. It was her father again. Agent Martinez gestured for her to answer, then pulled out a small recording device. Maya? David's voice carried a note of panic she'd never heard before. You need to come home immediately. There are men asking questions about you at the store. Federal agents.
Maya looked at Agent Martinez, who nodded encouragingly. What kind of questions, Baba? Questions about your school, your bank accounts, your scholarship. Maya, you haven't done anything wrong, have you? You haven't gotten involved in something you shouldn't have? The irony was staggering. Her father was asking if she had done something wrong while simultaneously being investigated for using her identity to commit federal fraud. Baba, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest with me. A long pause. Of course, my daughter. What do you need to know? Did you add your name to my bank account without telling me? The silence stretched so long Maya thought the call had dropped. Finally, David spoke, his voice different, smaller, defensive. Maya, sometimes families need to make difficult decisions. The store has been struggling. We couldn't afford to lose the business. Everything we've built, everything we've sacrificed for. That's not what I asked, Maya interrupted, her voice stronger than she felt. Did you add your name to my account without my knowledge? I'm your father. I have the right to protect my family's interests. Maya closed her eyes. Even now, facing federal investigation, he couldn't give her a straight answer. Baba, did you forge scholarship documents using my name? Maya, you don't understand how difficult things have been. The rent on the building went up 40%. Our suppliers in China have been demanding payment up front because of trade restrictions. Your mother's medical bills from last year's surgery. Mama had surgery? Maya's voice cracked. This was the first she'd heard of any medical problems. We didn't want to worry you. You were doing so well at school. But the bills, Maya, we were going to lose everything. The store, the apartment, everything we'd worked for. I saw an opportunity to help our family and ensure your education continued. 2 birds with 1 stone. Agent Martinez was taking notes rapidly. Maya felt like she was having an out-of-body experience, listening to her father confess to federal crimes, while simultaneously learning that her mother had been seriously ill. What kind of surgery, Baba? Gallbladder complications. She's fine now, but we had no insurance that covered the procedure. $43,000, Maya. Almost a year's income from the store. Maya's heart broke a little more. Her parents had been facing financial and medical crises while she'd been living comfortably on campus, worried about test scores and social activities. But that didn't justify what her father had done. Baba, I can't do this right now. I need time to think. Maya, wait! She hung up, her hands shaking. Agent Martinez stopped the recording device. That was very helpful, Maya. I know this is difficult, but you did the right thing.
Maya stared out the motel window at the parking lot, where ordinary people were starting their ordinary days, going to ordinary jobs, dealing with ordinary problems.
None of them were sitting in a cheap motel room learning that their father was a federal criminal and their mother had nearly died without them knowing. "What happens now?" she asked. "We'll need you to come to the field office this afternoon to give a formal statement. We'll also need you to walk us through everything you remember about the scholarship application process, any conversations with your father about financial aid, and any documents you may have signed without fully understanding their purpose." Maya nodded numbly. "Will he go to prison?" Agent Martinez's expression softened. "That will depend on several factors: how much money was involved, whether he cooperates with the investigation, his criminal history, and how the judge views his motivations. Financial aid fraud is a felony, but judges sometimes consider family circumstances during sentencing." "And what about me? My enrollment status?" "That depends on the university's policies and how this investigation concludes. If you were truly unaware of the fraud, you may be able to appeal your suspension. But Maya," Agent Martinez leaned forward, "you need to understand that even if criminal charges against you are unlikely, the university might still hold you responsible for accepting financial aid you weren't entitled to receive." Maya spent the afternoon at the FBI field office, walking through every detail she could remember. The agents were thorough but respectful, clearly recognizing that she was as much a victim as anyone else. They showed her additional evidence they'd gathered: bank records, forged documents, and email correspondence between her father and the university's financial aid office using fake Henderson Foundation addresses. The sophistication of the fraud was stunning. David had created multiple fake email accounts, designed official-looking letterhead, and maintained consistent correspondence with university officials for over 2 years. He'd researched scholarship application procedures, financial aid regulations, and university policies. This wasn't desperation-driven, impulsive behavior. It was methodical, long-term criminal planning. When Maya finally returned to the motel that evening, she found Jesse waiting in the parking lot with 2 large duffel bags. "Your stuff," Jesse said simply, then wrapped Maya in a fierce hug. "I don't know what's going on, but I know you, and I know you're not the kind of person who deserves whatever this is." Maya broke down crying in the parking lot of the Sunset Motel, clinging to her roommate while strangers walked past them on their way to and from dinner. Jessie didn't ask questions, didn't demand explanations, just held her friend while she fell apart. "My dad's a criminal. He stole money using my name, and now I can't go to school anymore, and my mom almost died and I didn't even know, and everything I thought I knew about my life is a lie." Jessie pulled back to look at her. "Okay, that's a lot. But you know what? You're still you. You're still the person who tutored me through calculus, who stayed up all night helping me debug my programming assignments, who brings soup to sick people, and remembers everyone's birthdays. Whatever your dad did, that doesn't change who you are." They sat on the curb outside the motel as the sun set, eating takeout Chinese food that Jessie had brought from their favorite campus restaurant. It was the first real meal Maya had managed to eat since the crisis began. "What are you going to do?" Jessie asked. Maya had been asking herself the same question all day. "I don't know. I can't go back to school until this is resolved. I can't go home because my dad might get arrested and I can't handle watching that happen. I can't afford to stay in this motel much longer."
"You can stay with me," Jessie offered immediately. "My family has a guest room. My mom would love having you around. She's always asking about my brilliant roommate." Maya felt tears threatening again. "Jessie, you don't understand. This is federal fraud. Your family doesn't want to get involved in something like this. My family wants to help a friend who's in trouble through no fault of her own. There's a difference." As they cleaned up their takeout containers, Maya's phone buzzed with a text from her mother. "Maya, please call me. I'm scared. People are asking questions about you and your father. I don't understand what's happening." Maya showed the text to Jessie, who read it with a frown. "Your mom doesn't know what's going on?" "She doesn't handle anything involving government agencies or official business. My dad always took care of those things. She probably has no idea what he was doing." "Then she's another victim in this," Jessie pointed out. "Just like you."
Maya called her mother back, this time without Agent Martinez recording the conversation. Lynn answered on the first ring, her voice high with anxiety. "Maya, where are you? Why won't you come home?" "Mama, I need to ask you something important. Did you know that Baba had access to my bank account?" "Bank account? I don't understand bank accounts. Your father handles money things." "Did you know about my scholarship money? About the Henderson Foundation?" "You got scholarship money. I was so proud. Your father showed me the letters." Maya's heart sank. Her mother had been shown the fake correspondence, probably couldn't read it well enough to spot the forgeries, and had simply trusted her husband to handle their daughter's education funding. "Mama, did you know about your surgery? About how expensive it was?" A long pause. "Surgery was expensive, yes, but your father said insurance would pay." "Did insurance pay?" I don't know. Your father handles insurance." I could picture my mother, probably sitting in the cramped apartment kitchen, surrounded by the familiar smell of jasmine tea and the sounds of Richmond District traffic outside. Lynn had immigrated to America trusting that her husband would navigate the complex systems she couldn't understand. Now, that trust was destroying their family. "Mama, there might be problems with Baba's business. Government problems. You might need to talk to a lawyer." "Lawyer? Maya, what are you saying? What kind of problems?" "I can't explain everything right now, but Baba might have done something illegal to get money for your surgery and for my school. The government is investigating." The silence on the other end stretched so long, Maya wondered if her mother had hung up. Finally, Lynn spoke in Mandarin, her voice barely a whisper. "What will happen to us?" Maya's heart broke hearing her mother ask the same question she'd been asking herself. "I don't know, Mama, but I'm going to figure this out, okay? I'm going to make sure you're safe." After hanging up, Maya sat in the gathering darkness outside the motel, processing the full scope of the damage her father's actions had caused. It wasn't just her education, or even
Her family's financial future. It was the trust that held their family together, the faith her mother had placed in her husband's integrity, the pride her immigrant parents had felt in their American-born daughter's achievements. The next morning brought another call from Agent Martinez. "Maya, we need to meet. There have been new developments." They met at a diner near the FBI field office, the kind of place where coffee refills were automatic and conversations could blend into the ambient noise of clinking dishes and morning rush conversations. Agent Martinez looked tired, like he'd been working through the night. "We executed a search warrant at your father's business yesterday evening," he said without preamble. "We found additional evidence of financial irregularities beyond the scholarship fraud." Maya's stomach dropped. "What kind of irregularities?" "Tax evasion, unreported income, fraudulent business loan applications." "Maya, your father's been running various schemes for at least 5 years. The scholarship fraud was just the most recent." The revelation hit Maya like a physical blow. She'd always known her father was pragmatic about business regulations, but systematic financial fraud over 5 years suggested something much darker than desperate circumstances. "How much money are we talking about?" she asked. "Potentially several $100,000 across all the schemes. The scholarship fraud was actually the smallest component." Maya stared into her coffee cup, watching cream swirl in meaningless patterns. "So everything I thought I knew about our family's life was built on lies." "Maya, there's something else. During the search, we found documents suggesting your father was planning to expand the scholarship fraud scheme. He was researching other universities, other fake foundations. This wasn't a one-time desperate act. It was an ongoing criminal enterprise." The diner suddenly felt too warm, too crowded, too normal for a conversation about her father's double life. Maya excused herself to the bathroom, where she splashed cold water on her face and tried to process this new information. When she returned, Agent Martinez had ordered her a fresh cup of coffee and was reviewing notes on his phone. "Maya, I need to prepare you for what's going to happen next. We're going to arrest your father today."
The words echoed in her head. Arrest. Her father. Today. Does my mother know? We've contacted her and suggested she retain legal counsel. We've also arranged for a Mandarin-speaking victim advocate to help her understand the situation and access social services if needed. Maya felt a spike of gratitude toward Agent Martinez for thinking of her mother's language barriers and vulnerability. What about the store?
Agent Martinez shook his head. That's not advisable right now. Your father's arrest will likely be covered by local media. Financial aid fraud cases generate public interest. If you're there when reporters show up, it could complicate your own situation. My own situation? Maya, while we believe you were an unknowing victim, the university may still pursue civil action to recover the fraudulent financial aid payments. You may be held financially responsible for the money, even if you didn't knowingly participate in the scheme. The practical implications were staggering. Maya could face a civil judgment for $127,000, money she'd never received, spent, or even known existed in her account. She could be barred from federal financial aid at any university. Her academic transcript might be flagged, making a transfer to another institution nearly impossible. So, even though I'm innocent, my education is still destroyed? Not necessarily destroyed, but significantly complicated. You'll need to work with university administrators and possibly legal counsel to navigate the appeals process. Maya spent the rest of the morning walking aimlessly around the city, trying to process the magnitude of her situation. She found herself in Golden Gate Park, sitting by the Japanese tea garden where her family had often gone for weekend outings when she was younger. The carefully maintained gardens and peaceful walking paths felt like artifacts from someone else's childhood. Her phone buzzed with news alerts. Local electronics store owner arrested in federal financial aid fraud scheme. Immigration success story turned criminal enterprise. Berkeley student's father charged with scholarship fraud. Maya's hands shook as she read the articles. They described David Chen as a calculating criminal who exploited the financial aid system while honest families struggled to afford college education. They mentioned his elaborate scheme to defraud taxpayers through fake scholarship programs. They called his actions a betrayal of the American dream that welcomed his family decades ago. None of the articles mentioned that he'd also been trying to pay for his wife's emergency surgery. None of them acknowledged the impossible financial pressures facing small business owners during the pandemic. Maya didn't excuse her father's actions, but the media coverage reduced him to a one-dimensional villain when the truth was more complicated. Her phone rang. It was Jesse. Maya, I just saw the news. Where are you? Golden Gate Park, just thinking. I'm coming to get you. Don't move. Jesse, you don't need to. Yes, I do. Friends don't let friends process federal criminal cases alone in public parks. While waiting for Jesse, Maya called Professor Williams. She needed to hear from someone who saw her more than a criminal's daughter or a fraud victim. Maya, I've been following the news coverage. How are you holding up? I don't know, Maya answered honestly. I feel like everything I thought I knew about my family, my life, my future, it's all been destroyed, and I don't know how to rebuild from nothing. You're not starting from nothing, Professor Williams said firmly. You have an extraordinary mind, strong ethical principles, and people who believe in you. Your father's actions don't erase your accomplishments or your potential. But how do I continue my education when I might owe the university $127,000? How do I transfer to another school when my academic record is tied to fraud? How do I face other students knowing that I took financial aid money they deserved more than me?
Professor Williams was quiet for a moment. Maya, those are all legitimate concerns, but they're also problems with potential solutions. What I'm worried about is whether you're letting shame and guilt prevent you from fighting for your future. Maya wiped away tears she hadn't realized were falling. I just don't know if I deserve to fight for it anymore. That's exactly why you need to fight, because giving up now means your father's actions win. They destroy not just his life and your mother's, but yours too. Is that the outcome you want? When Jessie arrived, she found Maya sitting on a bench near the tea garden, staring at her phone with the blank expression of someone who'd hit emotional overload. "Okay," Jessie said, sitting down beside her. "We're going to make a plan. Not a big, life-changing, solve-everything plan, just a plan for today and tomorrow." "I don't think I can plan anything right now." "That's why I'm going to plan for you. First, you're coming home with me. My mom already made up the guest room and bought groceries for your favorite foods. Don't ask me how she knew what they were. She's weirdly good at that kind of thing." Maya felt a flicker of warmth despite everything. "Jessie, your family doesn't even know me. They know you mattered to me, and that's enough. Second, we're going to call the university's student advocacy office. They have people whose job is to help students navigate exactly this kind of crisis." "What if they can't help?" "Then we'll find someone who can." "Maya, you're not the first student to have family members commit crimes. You're not the first person to have their education disrupted by circumstances beyond their control. There are resources and precedents and people whose job is to help in situations like this." As they drove toward Jessie's family home in Oakland, Maya felt the first glimmer of hope she'd experienced in days. Not hope that everything would be easy or that the problems would disappear, but hope that she might not have to face this crisis alone. Maya's phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "This is Mrs. Park from the apartment next to your family's store. Your mother is very upset and doesn't understand what's happening. Can you call her?" The text reminded Maya that her father's arrest wasn't just affecting their immediate family. The Chen family had been part of the Richmond District community for over 2 decades. Their neighbors, customers, and friends were watching their lives collapse in real time. "I need to call my mother," Maya told Jessie. "Do you want privacy or do you want moral support?" Maya thought about it. She'd been handling family crises alone for so long that accepting help felt foreign. But maybe this was too big for solo navigation. "Moral support, please." Lynn answered on the first ring, her voice thick with tears. "Maya, is it true? Did your father really steal money?" Maya closed her eyes, wishing she could spare her mother this pain. "Yes, Mama, it's true." The sound of her mother crying broke something inside Maya's chest. Lynn had sacrificed so much to build a life in America, had trusted her husband completely, had been so proud of her daughter's academic achievements. Now everything was crumbling. "What will happen to me? I don't know how to live in America without your father. I don't understand the language, the systems, the paperwork. I don't even know how to pay the electricity bill." Maya realized that her mother's vulnerability extended far beyond the immediate crisis. Lynn had been entirely dependent on David for everything involving the outside world. She'd never learned to drive, never handled insurance or utilities, never dealt with government agencies or business transactions. "Mama, we'll figure it out together. I'm going to help you." "But you have school. Your education is the most important thing." Maya looked at Jessie, who was listening with tears in her own eyes. "Mama, you're important too. Family takes care of family." After they hung up, Jessie squeezed Maya's hand. "Your mom is going to need a lot of support. Do you have other family who can help?" "Some cousins in Los Angeles, but we're not close. Most of our extended family is still in China." Maya felt the weight of responsibility settling on her shoulders. "I think I'm all she has." "Then we'll help her too," Jessie said simply. "My mom knows people in the Chinese community in Oakland. We'll find resources, support groups, maybe someone who can help her navigate the practical stuff while you deal with the legal issues." As they pulled into Jessie's driveway, Maya saw a modest ranch house with a well-maintained garden and warm light glowing through the windows. It looked like the kind of home where problems could be solved over homemade meals and patient conversations. "Jessie," Maya said as they gathered her bags from the car. "Yeah?" "Thank you for not running away when everything got complicated." Jessie grinned. "Maya, you helped me pass organic chemistry. I owe you at least one family crisis." Despite everything, Maya laughed.
It felt strange, almost inappropriate, but also necessary. Whatever happened next, she wasn't facing it alone. Maya woke up in Jessie's guest room to the smell of coffee and something that reminded her of her mother's cooking. For a moment, she forgot where she was, and why, until the events of the past week crashed back into consciousness like a cold wave. Jessie's mother, Grace Kim, was in the kitchen making what appeared to be enough food for a small army. She was a petite woman in her 50s with the kind of warm, competent energy that made everyone around her feel taken care of. "Maya, honey, I hope you're hungry. I made too much food. Occupational hazard of being a mom." Grace's smile was genuine, with no trace of the awkward sympathy Maya had been dreading. "Mrs. Kim, you really didn't need to." "Grace, please." "And yes, I did need to. Jessie told me you're dealing with some family difficulties. Sometimes the best thing you can do for someone is make sure they're properly fed while they figure things out." Maya accepted a plate of scrambled eggs, toast, and what she recognized as Korean pancakes. The normalcy of sitting at a family breakfast table felt surreal after days of motel rooms and FBI field offices. "Maya," Grace said carefully, "I know a woman named Helen Wu who works with the International Rescue Committee. She helps immigrants navigate legal and social services when family situations become complicated. Would you like me to ask if she might be able to help your mother?" Maya felt tears of gratitude threatening. That would be incredible. My mom, she's never had to handle things on her own before. "No one expects a crisis like this," Grace said gently. "The important thing is making sure she has support and information."
Maya's phone rang. Agent Martinez again. "Miss Chen, we need to meet this morning. There have been significant developments in your father's case that affect your situation." They met at the same diner as before. Agent Martinez looked even more tired than he had the previous day, but his expression carried something that might have been optimism. "Maya, your father has agreed to cooperate fully with our investigation in exchange for a plea agreement. He's providing information about other individuals who may have been involved in similar schemes." Maya frowned. "Other individuals?" "We believe your father may have been part of a larger network of people exploiting financial aid systems. He's given us names, bank account information, and details about how these schemes operate." The revelation that her father's crimes might be part of something bigger was somehow both better and worse than Maya had imagined. Better because it suggested he wasn't the mastermind, worse because it meant the damage was more extensive than just their family. What does this mean for him? For my mother? The cooperation should result in a reduced sentence, probably 2 to 3 years instead of the 5 to 7 he was facing. As for your mother, the apartment above the store isn't considered business property, so she won't lose her housing immediately. Maya felt a small relief. And what about me? Agent Martinez smiled, the first genuine smile she'd seen from him. "That's the good news. Your father's cooperation has confirmed what we suspected from the beginning. You had no knowledge of or involvement in the fraud. The university has agreed to consider your appeal for reinstatement." Maya's heart leapt. "Really?" "There are conditions. You'll need to demonstrate that you can continue your education without the fraudulent financial aid. You'll also need to participate in an interview process with university administrators to ensure you understand the situation and aren't at risk of future involvement in financial irregularities." Maya nodded eagerly. "I can do that. I'll work 3 jobs if I have to." "There's more," Agent Martinez continued. "The Henderson Foundation, the real one, heard about this case through media coverage. They've established an emergency scholarship program specifically for students who are victims of financial aid fraud." Maya stared at him. "I'm sorry, what?" "The Henderson Foundation exists, Maya. They don't currently have a program that matches the fake scholarship your father created, but they do provide educational funding for students facing exceptional circumstances. They've created a new program specifically for situations like yours." Maya felt dizzy. "So there might actually be legitimate scholarship money available?" "It's not guaranteed, but you'll be able to apply. And Maya, the foundation has specifically requested that you be considered for their first grant under this program. Maya walked out of the diner feeling like the world had shifted on its axis. For the first time in a week, her future felt possible rather than destroyed. She called Jessie immediately. "The university might let me come back," she said without preamble. "Maya, that's incredible. What changed?" Maya explained about her father's cooperation, the plea agreement, and a possibility of legitimate scholarship funding. Jessie screamed with excitement loud enough that Maya had to hold the phone away from her ear.
"We're celebrating tonight," Jessie declared. "I'm calling Professor Williams, and we're having dinner at that fancy place near campus that we always said we'd go to when we had something real to celebrate." That afternoon, Maya drove to San Francisco to see her mother for the first time since the crisis began. The electronics store was closed, with official notices taped to the windows, but Lynn was still living in the apartment above it. Maya climbed the narrow stairs that had been her daily path home from school for years. The hallway smelled the same, a mixture of jasmine tea, cooking oil, and the faint electrical scent that drifted up from the store below. But everything felt different now. Lynn opened the door before Maya could knock, as if she'd been watching from the window. She looked smaller than Maya remembered, older, more fragile. "Maya." Lynn pulled her daughter into a fierce hug. "I was so worried. I didn't know if you were safe, if you were angry with us, if you would still want to be our daughter." Maya held her mother tightly, breathing in the familiar scent of her hair. "Mama, I'm always going to be your daughter. Nothing can change that." They sat in the small living room where Maya had done homework throughout high school, where her parents had celebrated her acceptance to college, where the fake Henderson Foundation letters had once been displayed prominently on the mantelpiece. "Maya, I need to tell you things your father never wanted you to know," Lynn said in Mandarin, her English insufficient for the weight of what she needed to communicate. Maya listened as her mother explained the true depth of their financial struggles. The medical bills from Lynn's surgery had only been part of the problem. The store had been losing money for 3 years as online retailers undercut their prices and foot traffic to their neighborhood declined. They'd borrowed against their home equity, maxed out credit cards, and delayed payments to suppliers. "Your father was so ashamed," Lynn said. "He felt like he was failing as a husband, as a father, as a man. He kept saying that in China, he had been somebody important, an engineer with respect and authority. But in America, he was just a shopkeeper, struggling to pay bills." Maya began to understand the psychology behind her father's crimes. Not as an excuse, but as an explanation of how a man who had always prided himself on integrity had convinced himself that fraud was justified. "He told me the scholarship money was a blessing," Lynn said. "He said you had earned it through your hard work, and that using it to help our family was not wrong because we were all working toward your success." Maya felt a complex mixture of anger and sadness. Her father had rationalized his crimes as family loyalty, but he'd also put both Maya and Lynn at risk without their knowledge or consent. "Mama, what will you do now?" Lynn smiled sadly. "Mrs. Wu from the community center came to see me yesterday. She says there are programs to help people like me. English classes, job training, assistance with legal paperwork. I'm 62 years old, Maya. Maybe it's time I learned to be independent in America." The idea of her mother, who had been dependent on David for virtually everything, starting over at 62, was both heartbreaking and inspiring. "I want to help," Maya said. "You help by finishing your education," Lynn said firmly. "Your father made mistakes, but his dream for your future was real. Don't let his bad choices destroy your good ones." That evening, Maya joined Jessie and Professor Williams for dinner at Chez Panisse, the upscale Berkeley restaurant they'd always joked about trying when we're successful adults. The irony wasn't lost on Maya that she was finally there not to celebrate success, but to mark survival. Professor Williams raised her glass of wine. "To Maya Chen, who has shown more integrity in 1 week than many people demonstrate in a lifetime."
Maya felt tears threatening again. "Professor Williams, I haven't done anything special. I just got caught up in someone else's crimes." Maya, you could have tried to hide your suspicions, could have protected your father at the expense of the investigation, could have wallowed in self-pity instead of taking action. Instead, you chose truth over comfort, justice over loyalty. That's exactly the kind of ethical reasoning we want to see from future engineers. Speaking of which, Jessie interjected, tell her about the research position. Professor Williams smiled. I've been discussing your situation with the department chair. If you're reinstated, we'd like to offer you a research assistantship for the spring semester. It comes with a modest stipend and would help demonstrate your value to the university community. Maya stared at her. You trust me with a research position after everything that's happened? Maya, your academic work has always been exemplary. Your personal character has been tested under extraordinary circumstances and proven to be solid. Why wouldn't we trust you? Maya felt something shifting inside her. Not just relief, but a growing sense of her own resilience. She'd been so focused on what had been taken from her that she'd missed what remained: her intelligence, her integrity, her relationships with people who saw her clearly. There's something else, Professor Williams continued. I've been in touch with colleagues at other universities who work on financial aid fraud prevention. They're interested in your perspective as someone who experienced this type of fraud firsthand. There might be opportunities for you to contribute to policy research or fraud detection systems. Maya felt a spark of excitement. You mean turn this experience into something constructive? Exactly. Use your understanding of how these schemes work to help prevent them from happening to other families. As they walked back to Jessie's car after dinner, Maya felt something she hadn't experienced in over a week: hope for the future. Not just hope that her problems would be solved, but hope that she might emerge from this crisis stronger and more purposeful than before. Her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Miss Chen, this is Director Holbrook. Please call me tomorrow morning. I have news about your appeal. Maya showed the text to Jessie and Professor Williams. Whatever that news is, Professor Williams said, remember that you've already proven you can handle whatever comes next. Maya looked back at the campus as they drove away, its buildings lit against the dark sky. For the first time since this ordeal began, she allowed herself to imagine walking those paths again as a student rather than a visitor. Jessie, I think I'm ready to fight for my future. Good, because your future is definitely worth fighting for. Maya's hands trembled as she dialed Director Holbrook's number the next morning. She had barely slept, cycling through every possible scenario for what the university's decision might be. Jessie sat beside her on the guest room bed, providing silent moral support. Miss Chen? Director Holbrook's voice was warmer than she had ever heard it. I have good news. The university has approved your appeal for reinstatement effective immediately. Maya nearly dropped the phone. Really? I can come back? Yes, with some conditions. You'll be on academic probation for 1 semester, during which you'll meet weekly with an academic advisor. You'll also participate in a financial literacy program and complete community service hours educating other students about financial aid fraud prevention. Maya would have agreed to any conditions. I'll do whatever is required.
There's more, Director Holbrook continued. The Henderson Foundation has approved your application for their new Emergency Scholarship Program. They're providing full funding for your remaining undergraduate education, plus a summer internship at their headquarters focusing on fraud prevention initiatives. Maya started crying, deep, relieved sobs that seemed to come from somewhere she'd forgotten existed. Jessie wrapped her arms around her, crying too. Miss Chen, are you there? Yes, Maya managed through her tears. I'm here. I'm just... Thank you. Thank you so much. Maya, the foundation was particularly impressed by your cooperation with the federal investigation and your commitment to preventing other families from experiencing similar fraud. They see you as exactly the kind of student they want to support. After hanging up, Maya and Jessie spent several minutes just holding each other and crying. When they finally pulled apart, Jessie was grinning through her tears. "You did it," Jessie said. "You're coming back." "We did it," Maya corrected. "I couldn't have gotten through this without you and your family." Maya spent the morning completing paperwork for her reinstatement, meeting with academic advisors, and planning her course schedule for the spring semester. The familiar rhythm of university bureaucracy felt like coming home. Professor Williams found her in the registrar's office that afternoon. "I heard the good news. How does it feel to be officially reinstated?" "Surreal," Maya admitted. 3 weeks ago, I thought my life was over. Now, I'm not just back in school. I have research opportunities and a mission to help prevent this from happening to other students. Speaking of which, I have a proposal for you. The Computer Science Department is developing a new course on ethics in technology, with a focus on how digital systems can be exploited for fraud. Would you be interested in being a teaching assistant? Maya felt another piece of her future clicking into place. "You trust me to help teach other students about ethics?" "Maya, you've lived through a case study in the real-world consequences of financial fraud. You understand both the technology and the human impact in ways that pure academic study can't provide. That makes you uniquely qualified to help other students understand these issues." That evening, Maya drove back to San Francisco to share the news with her mother. She found Lynn in the apartment, surrounded by paperwork, and looking overwhelmed but determined. "Mama, I have good news." Maya explained about her reinstatement, the scholarship, and the opportunities ahead. Lynn's face lit up with the first genuine smile Maya had seen from her since the crisis began. "I'm so proud of you," Lynn said in Mandarin. "Not just for your academic success, but for how you handled this crisis. You showed courage and integrity even when it was difficult. What about you, Mama? How are you doing?" Lynn gestured to the papers spread across the table. "Mrs. Wu was helping me understand our financial situation and what options I have. It's frightening, but also exciting. I've never made decisions for myself before. Everything was always your father's responsibility." Maya looked at the papers, job applications, English class schedules, information about small business loans for women entrepreneurs. "Are you thinking about reopening the store?" "Maybe, or maybe something new. Mrs. Wu says there are programs to help immigrant women start businesses. I've been thinking about what I'm good at besides relying on your father."
Maya felt a surge of admiration for her mother. At 62, facing the collapse of everything she'd built with her husband, Lynn was choosing growth over retreat. "I want to help however I can," Maya said. "The best way you can help is by being successful and happy," Lynn replied. "But Maya, I also want you to visit your father." Maya's stomach tightened. She hadn't seen David since his arrest 3 weeks ago. "I don't know if I'm ready for that." "He's your father," Lynn said gently. "He made terrible mistakes, but he loves you. He's been asking about you every time I visit." Maya spent the weekend thinking about whether she was ready to face her father. The anger had faded somewhat, replaced by a complex mixture of disappointment, sadness, and reluctant understanding. Professor Williams had helped her see that forgiveness didn't require excusing someone's actions. It meant choosing not to let their mistakes define your relationship permanently. On Sunday afternoon, Maya drove to the federal detention center where David was being held pending sentencing. The facility was depressingly institutional. Concrete walls, fluorescent lighting, and the kind of security measures that reminded visitors they were entering a place for people who had broken society's rules. David looked older than Maya remembered, gray showing in his hair and new lines around his eyes. He was wearing an orange jumpsuit that made him look smaller and more vulnerable than the confident businessman she'd known. "Maya," his voice cracked when he saw her. "You came." They sat across from each other at a metal table in the visitor's room, separated by plexiglass and connected by phones that made everything sound distant and artificial. "Baba," Maya said, using the childhood name that felt both natural and strange now. "I'm sorry," David said immediately.
I know that's not enough, but I need you to know how sorry I am. Not just for getting caught, but for putting you and your mother in this situation." Maya studied her father's face, looking for signs of manipulation or self-pity. Instead, she saw genuine remorse and something that looked like relief, the relief of someone who had been carrying a heavy secret for too long. "Why?" Maya asked. "Why didn't you just tell us how bad things were? We could have figured out another way." David was quiet for a long moment. "Because I was supposed to be the one who figured things out. I brought our family to America promising better opportunities. When those opportunities started disappearing, when I couldn't provide for my family the way I had promised, I felt like I was failing at everything that mattered." "So you decided to commit fraud instead of asking for help?" "I told myself it wasn't really fraud because the money was going to benefit you. I convinced myself that a system that charged so much for education while wasting money on other things deserved to be cheated. I was wrong, but at the time, it felt like the only way to save our family." I felt some of my anger softening, though not disappearing. "Baba, you didn't save our family. You nearly destroyed it." "I know," David said quietly. "I know that now. I also know that you and your mother are both stronger than I gave you credit for. You're handling this crisis better than I handled the financial problems that caused it." They talked for the full hour allowed for the visit. David asked about Maya's reinstatement, her scholarship, her plans for the future. He seemed genuinely happy about her opportunities, even knowing they existed partly because of his crimes.
"Maya," he said as their time was ending, "I want you to promise me something." "What?" "Don't let my mistakes limit your ambitions. You have the chance to do meaningful work, to help other families avoid what we went through. Promise me you'll take that opportunity seriously." Maya looked at her father through the plexiglass and saw not just the man who had betrayed her trust, but the man who had worked 16-hour days to give her opportunities, who had celebrated every academic achievement, who had always believed she could succeed in America in ways he never could. "I promise," she said. Walking out of the detention center, Maya felt something she hadn't expected: peace. Not forgiveness exactly, but acceptance. Her father was neither the perfect provider she'd once believed him to be, nor the irredeemable criminal the media had portrayed. He was a flawed human being who had made terrible decisions under pressure, and she could love him while still condemning his actions. Maya returned to campus the following week to begin spring semester. Walking across the quad with her backpack full of textbooks felt like returning to a life she'd thought was lost forever. Students hurried past her toward classes and study groups, most of them unaware that one of their classmates had spent the previous month learning that nothing in life was as secure as it seemed. In her first class, Advanced Database Systems, Maya found herself paying attention to discussions of data security and fraud prevention with new intensity. When Professor Martinez, no relation to Agent Martinez, Maya discovered with some amusement, discussed SQL injection attacks and financial data vulnerabilities, Maya raised her hand. "Professor, what would you say are the most effective ways to prevent identity theft in financial aid systems?" Professor Martinez looked intrigued. "That's a very specific question, Miss Chen. Are you interested in cybersecurity applications?" "I'm interested in protecting students and families from financial fraud," Maya said. "I think technology could play a bigger role in prevention than it currently does." After class, Professor Martinez approached her. "Miss Chen, I've heard about your situation through the department. If you're interested in focusing your senior project on financial aid fraud prevention, I'd be happy to advise you." Maya felt another piece of her future crystallizing. "I'd love that." Over the following weeks, Maya threw herself into her studies with renewed purpose. She wasn't just learning computer science concepts, she was building tools to protect other families from experiencing what hers had gone through. Her research assistantship with Professor Williams focused on developing machine learning algorithms that could detect patterns indicative of financial aid fraud. Maya's unique perspective as someone who had lived through such fraud made her invaluable to the project. "Maya," Professor Williams said during one of their weekly meetings, "I've been contacted by the Department of Education about your work. They're interested in potentially funding a larger research project based on your findings." Maya looked up from the code she was debugging. The Department of Education? They want to implement better fraud detection systems across all universities that receive federal financial aid. Your algorithms could be part of a nationwide prevention program. Maya felt the scope of her potential impact expanding. What had started as personal tragedy could become a tool for protecting thousands of students and families. The community service hours required by her reinstatement became one of the most rewarding parts of Maya's week. She spent Saturday mornings at the campus financial aid office talking to incoming students about how to recognize and avoid financial aid scams.
The most important thing to remember, she would tell groups of nervous freshmen and their parents, is that legitimate financial aid never requires upfront payments or asks you to provide bank account access to third parties. After one of these sessions, a mother approached Maya privately. "My daughter received an email about a scholarship that seems too good to be true. Could you look at it?" Maya examined the email and immediately recognized several red flags. Urgent language, requests for personal information, and contact information that didn't match any legitimate educational institution. "This is definitely a scam," Maya told the worried mother. "Here's how you can tell." As Maya explained the warning signs, she realized how far she'd come from that terrifying 3:47 a.m. phone call that had shattered her world. She was no longer just a victim of fraud, she had become a guardian against it. 6 months later, Maya stood in the Henderson Foundation's gleaming conference room, presenting her research findings to a panel of education officials and cybersecurity experts. Her fraud detection algorithm had successfully identified over 200 suspicious financial aid applications in beta testing across 50 universities. "Miss Chen," said the Foundation's director, "your work has the potential to save millions of dollars in fraudulent disbursements and protect countless families from the trauma you experienced." Maya thought about her father, now serving his sentence and participating in a prison education program. During their weekly phone calls, he expressed pride in how she'd transformed their family's tragedy into something meaningful. Her mother had successfully completed English classes and opened a small catering business, finding independence she'd never imagined possible. "The most important outcome," Maya told the panel, "isn't the money saved. It's the families who won't have to face the choice between financial survival and ethical behavior." After the presentation, Maya walked across the Berkeley campus where her journey had nearly ended. She paused at the bench by the pond where she'd once sat in despair, watching ducks paddle peacefully while her world collapsed. Now, as a senior with job offers from 3 major tech companies and acceptance to graduate school, Maya understood that crisis could be transformation in disguise. Her father's crimes had initially destroyed her sense of security and family trust. But navigating that destruction had revealed strengths she'd never known she possessed, and a purpose she might never have discovered otherwise. Maya pulled out her phone and called her mother. "Mama, the presentation went well. The Department of Education wants to implement the system nationwide." "I'm so proud of you, Lynn," said in much improved English. "You took something terrible and made it beautiful." That evening, Maya sat in her apartment, the first place she'd ever lived that felt entirely her own, and reflected on the winding path that had brought her here. The scholarship money that started this nightmare was long gone, but she'd gained something more valuable. The knowledge that she could rebuild from nothing, that integrity was more powerful than comfort, and that the worst things that happened to you could become the foundation for the best things you'd do for others. Maya opened her laptop and began typing her graduate school application essay. The day my father was arrested for financial aid fraud, I thought my life was over. Instead, it was just beginning.